We are back here on the show to discuss one of the three remaining quarterbacks that need to get a contract extension done. I believe for the greater benefit of the quarterback, obviously, but also their team. That being Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. And I know there are more reports that came out just today on Jordan Love holding out of the practices that started today, and Adam Schefter talking about how close the deal could be. I'm going to touch on that more a little bit tomorrow, but I thought it was important to bring up what ESPN's Jeremy Fowler mentioned over the weekend on how these negotiations are going, because you get a lot of contrasting reports that I think each hold their value and that each can bring something to where we could make a final conclusion on what could happen on this situation with Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Because like I mentioned, Green Bay and Jordan Love are just one of three teams really trying to get a contract extension done for their quarterback right now. The other ones being the Miami Dolphins in Tua, Dallas, and Dak Prescott for right now. And with that being said, I do recall the Dolphins and Green Bay being the two teams, not really the Cowboys, really the Dolphins and the Packers, mentioning that they'd ideally want to get these deals done before training camp, but obviously that deadline has now passed, at least for the Green Bay Packers, and still obviously no announcements yet on anything being done right now. But with Green Bay reporting to camp yesterday on Sunday and now the first practice being held today, Jordan Love, obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw, is holding out, so he is not practicing. He informed the Green Bay Packers of that over the weekend, and now we're left wondering where we can go from here. If the deadline has already passed to get it done before training camp, you don't want to carry this on too much, because Matt LaFleur even mentioned it today that they had to make a quick pivot now and try to arrange everything now to not have Jordan Love in there. And you don't want that. You'd want everybody to be there ideally. But that's just the nature of it. That's the business side of it. And ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, like I mentioned before, got on the television on the network of ESPN to talk about where he's hearing, what he can provide any update on anything that's going on with Jordan Love and these negotiations. And I thought it was pretty interesting on what he said, because he gave a little bit of positive side of it and also the negative side of it, when he said that the vibes right now are positive, but there hasn't been a lot of production as far as getting close to a deal. It's going to take a little time. When camp begins, their negotiators and their officials are all together. They're going to try to get a plan together from that point on, obviously. And then he also added that Green Bay knows it's going to have to be in the $50 million plus range at that, because they pretty much have an agreement without really talking to each other about that. That is probably the floor of what we're talking about when it comes to an extension for Jordan Love. And it's crazy to think about it now, because if you would have brought this up when this season started and you're talking about a contract extension for Jordan Love, you never would have brought up 50 million plus now. But how everything transpires and how crazy the offseason is, and just how phenomenal of a season Jordan Love had. Only 1 year though, because it is a fact that it is worth bringing up, that now we're talking about Jordan being a $53 million a year type of quarterback, where I believe he's going to be good, but you have to take it all, you have to gather all the facts and just try and be objective about it, because he's had one very good year, similar to Tua, and I think the conversation with both of them is very different. Of course, Tua has the injury problems that are a major concern, but again, it's always 1 year for both of them, and Tua had a phenomenal year when he was healthy. So again, how people talk about Tua in regards to Jordan, where they both had phenomenal years, I think there's a bigger gap there than some, including myself, think is fair. But that's just the nature of the circumstances, the situations that each of these quarterbacks find themselves in. But we are talking about 50 plus million for Jordan Love, so that's obviously a lot of money. But Green Bay Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst said in June that both sides wanted the same thing, and he really emphasized that the stability at the quarterback position allows for the security he seeks to build the rest of their team, which is a great point that he brings up, especially with a young team like the Packers, because knowing and truly believing that you have their guy, and I think a lot of people believe that Jordan Love can reach talent level of that of Aaron Rodgers, because a lot of the throws and a lot of the plays he make, weirdly enough, look similar. And I guess it's not too weird learning from Aaron Rodgers, but it is a little spooky how similar they look when they play. But when you have that stability, like Gutekunst said, at that position with a young team, you really know where you're going in terms of trajectory, on projecting where this team can be in 3 years, 4 years, if you get a long-term extension done. With the rest of this young core, you could plan now in the future with them. Who do you want to keep? Who do you want to develop further? And it makes it just a lot easier when you have a quarterback, especially a young one as well, that you know is going to be the face of this franchise for the next 10 years probably. But in regards to what Jeremy Fowler said, they're in a good spot. I think most people believe that side of it, but now you hear some reports of this being close to being done. Some people believe it'll get done this week, and that could very much be the case. But to take it all into consideration, talking about where this fits in, there are some factors that play into it, especially with another guy that got his extension done this offseason, just in the same division, Jared Goff, in the same position, again, in the same division as well. I expect, if anything's going to be done sooner rather than later, I expect it to be at least $53 million per year. Exactly the same that Jared Goff got this offseason, because of those facts that there's always going to be that comparison in the division, in the same position as well. Jared, obviously the Lions got further than the Green Bay Packers, and they're a lot further, I think, along in terms of building up this roster, because the Packers are still super young, and they got to a position where nobody thought they would be, whereas with the Lions, you thought it was doubtful, but I think it was more believable that the Lions could get to an NFC Championship game that they ended up with. But with that being the case, there's always going to be that comparison now going forward for however long these guys are squaring off against each other. And based on the years that they had, very similar numbers, very successful, exceeding a lot of people's expectations. With the comparisons, people are always going to look at if Jordan Love is making more than Jared, or if Jared is still making more than Jordan. That is always going to be something that plays into the conversation when you're bringing them up. I'm sure both of them are going to be asked about it, how it affects them in a matter in terms of the financial side of things. So I expect Jordan to at least get that. And if you're Jordan Love, you're never going to say it, but I'm sure he'll take himself over anybody. And I'm sure, looking at the season that he had, he'll bet on himself. And if Jared's making that, and I believe that he believes that that team that they have in Green Bay can go toe-to-toe with the Lions, why shouldn't he be making $53 million also, if not more, for the Green Bay Packers? You could even argue that Jordan is more pivotal for the Packers than Jared Goff is for the Detroit Lions, because in a lot of people's minds, I feel like nobody thought Jared would get that amount of money, and I'm sure people also believe that you could stick a lot of quarterbacks in that position and they be as good as Jared Goff or even better than him, whereas with the Packers, I don't think that's the case in a lot of people's minds. But I thought Jared's deal was acceptable because of the way he fits in with that team, the whole situation with him being traded there and how he was almost sent there to die, revive that whole thing, and fitting into the system that they want to run with Ben Johnson. I thought it was an acceptable deal, but you could certainly make that argument that Jordan is more vital to the Packers, a young team, him being the leader now, than Jared is for the Lions. That's an acceptable argument, but that's just one of the factors that plays into it. And Jordan Love really hasn't talked too much about it. He has denied the opportunity to answer any questions about it. The Packers have denied anybody asking Jordan Love any questions about it, being all honest. So right now, it's in a weird spot. I think it does benefit Green Bay right now to get this deal done, potentially before the Dolphins or the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think Dallas will get it done, but of course when I say that, a day or two from now, Dak is going to get $60 million or something. But I really do believe Green Bay, in all honesty, will be the team to get it done first, just because we're hearing about it more now. Gutekunst is talking about it. Everybody in the NFL, ESPN is mentioning and projecting where this could get done. I think it benefits them the most to get it done right now because of their situation being the most ideal. They don't have other big contracts to deal with, other than Kenny Clark that just got his major contract. a day or two ago. They don't really have any other position making north of probably $15 million, $20 million. So because of that, this is the most ideal time to take advantage of all that extra room that you have now with a young team, a cheap team, to take advantage to pay your quarterback and, like Gutekunst said, have that stability and that security to go further and build this team around Jordan Love, knowing that you're going to have him guaranteed for the next 4 to 5 years. And not only that, I failed to mention that Josh Jacobs also just got a major contract, but he's a running back, so he's not really affecting the cap too much compared to a wide receiver or something like that on the offensive side of the ball. And also when you compare him to other quarterbacks, Tua and the injury concerns with him, Dak Prescott and the roster level, there's no real doubts when it comes with Jordan Love on how paying him and how much he could improve that team just going forward. With Dak and the Cowboys, yeah, you can pay Dak, but it doesn't really guarantee you anything that this team is going to be any better than they were over the last decade or so, because they just haven't proven it. So what base or what fact do you have to base that belief off of? And Tua, same thing with the injuries. Yeah, he played good last year, but that is always in the back of your mind, and you don't know if he's going to play 15, 17 games each year. With Jordan, you don't really have too much. He hasn't shown you too many injury concerns, and he's exceeded all expectations. The only thing you could say about him is maybe that maybe slump that he could potentially have now that it's not a surprise of how good they are. But other than that, I think Jordan, the Packers are in a good spot to get this done. But again, if Dak and the Cowboys do get it done before everybody, it would ruin it for everybody, because I think if the Cowboys do pay Dak, they're going to overpay him, reset the market, and then that would stink for the Packers and the Dolphins, because if he gets $57-60 million, everything I believe goes out the window, and now the Packers and the Dolphins have to reevaluate everything, and I'm sure that price is going to go up for all other quarterbacks. So that would be really the worst thing to happen if you're the Packers, which is why they should get this done first. I believe they will get it done first because of all the attention on it, but we shall see how it all plays out. But that's all we have to say for right now on where it stands with Jordan Love and the Packers. We're going to go to another break, and we're going to talk about some two new topics that I didn't bring up. Philadelphia's owner, Jeff Lurie, he is showing his support for Nick Sirianni, believing that he could be his next Andy Reid in Philadelphia. High praise for Sirianni. And also how the Minnesota Vikings envision Sam Darnold's journey going with them. Sort of like a Geno Smith type of revival there in Minnesota on what they expect, hopefully with Sam Darnold in 2024. I'll explain more on both of those topics when we return after this break.